The light on the turnstile did not buzz. It did not flash, it simply pulsed a soft, silent crimson. Elias Vance stood very still. He was wearing a suit that cost more than the security guard's car. He was holding a leather portfolio that contained the future of the company. He was the CEO of the North American division, and he was stuck on the wrong side of the glass. It was raining outside. Not a storm, just a relentless, graying drizzle that coated the windows of the Sterling Institute. Elias looked at the small plastic reader. He tapped his badge again. The same soft, indifferent red. He felt the cold air from the revolving doors behind him. It touched the back of his neck. A warning. He looked up at the guard. His name was Kellen. Elias knew this because he made it a point to know the names of the staff. It was part of the brand. Approachable excellence. Kellen had held the elevator for Elias yesterday. Kellen had smiled and asked about Elias's daughter. Today, Kellen did not smile. He stood behind the high marble desk, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes flickered to the screen embedded in the granite. Then they flickered back to Elias. There was no recognition in them, only protocol. "It's not reading, Mr. Vance," Kellen said. His voice was flat, not rude, just empty. Elias forced a laugh. It was a short, tight sound. "I can see that, Kellen. Must be the chip. I have the quarterly review in 15 minutes. He leaned forward slightly, instinctively lowering his voice, creating a conspiracy of two. "Just buzz me through. I'll have IT swap the badge after the meeting." This was the moment. The moment where the human element overrides the machine. The moment where status asserts itself over procedure. Elias waited for the click of the latch. He waited for the nod. Kellen didn't move. "I can't do that, sir." The words hung in the sterile air of the lobby. Elias felt a prickle of heat beneath his collar. "Kellen, it's me. I'm the one presenting. The system shows your clearance as suspended, sir." Suspended. The word felt heavy, physical, like a stone placed in his pocket. Elias looked around. The lobby was filling up. Morning commuters were streaming in, shaking off umbrellas. Most of them were heading to the main banks of elevators. The general population, but a few were drifting toward the VIP lane. A tall woman in a beige trench coat walked up behind Elias. He didn't know her name. She was new, maybe legal, maybe compliance. She stood close enough that he could smell her coffee. She was waiting for him to move. Elias felt the urge to turn around, to explain, to say, "There is a glitch," to say, "I run this building." But he didn't. He feared the scene more than the error. He feared the disruption. If he made a scene, he became the problem. If he stayed calm, he remained the professional. That was the bargain he had made his entire life. Swallow the insult. Keep the dignity. Suspended, Elias repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "That's what it says," Kellen replied. "You'll have to go to the front desk, get a temporary pass." The front desk. Visitor registration. Elias looked at the woman behind him. She cleared her throat. A tiny, sharp sound. It cut through him like a blade. He stepped aside. He had to. To stand there was to block the flow of commerce. To stand there was to admit something was wrong. He stepped out of the lane. The woman didn't look at him. She tapped her badge. The light pulsed green, a friendly, welcoming emerald. The gate slid open. She walked through, her heels clicking a steady rhythm on the polished floor. She vanished toward the private elevators, the elevators that went straight to the 60th floor, the boardroom. Elias stood alone by the glass wall. He checked his watch. 14 minutes. He pulled out his phone. His fingers were slightly slippery. He dialed Corinne, his executive assistant. It went to voicemail. That never happened. Corinne lived attached to her phone. She answered on the first ring at midnight. He dialed again. Voicemail. "You have reached the desk of..." He hung up. A distinct, irrational thought crossed his mind. He thought about his tie. It was a deep blue silk. He had chosen it because it projected stability. Now he felt like it was tightening. He looked at the front desk. The line for visitor passes was long. Careers, interns, contractors, people who did not belong. If he stood in that line, he would be late. If he was late to the board meeting, the narrative changed. He wasn't the CEO arriving to deliver record profits. He was the employee who couldn't manage his own time. He looked back at Kellen. Kellen was staring at a monitor, watching a camera feed. He looked bored. Elias felt a surge of anger. It started in his stomach, hot and acidic. He could walk back over there. He could demand a supervisor. He could raise his voice just enough to make them uncomfortable. He could assert his reality against their screen. But he didn't. He smoothed the front of his jacket. He took a breath. He walked toward the visitor line. He joined the queue behind a delivery driver holding a stack of pizzas. The smell of pepperoni mixed with the expensive scent of the lobby. It made him nauseous. He checked his phone again. No messages. No emails. Usually, his inbox was a waterfall of demands. Now, silence. The digital silence was louder than the lobby. He felt invisible. Or worse, he felt like he was being erased. The line moved slowly. The receptionist was chatting with a bike messenger. She was laughing. Elias gripped the handle of his portfolio. His knuckles turned white. He told himself this was a test. Leaders are tested. They want to see if he cracks under pressure. Maybe the board orchestrated this. A stress test. It sounded insane, but it was comforting. If it was a test, there was a way to pass. The way to pass was to remain calm, to comply, to show them that no amount of friction could slow him down. He reached the front of the line. The receptionist looked up. She was chewing gum. "Name?" she asked. She didn't look at his face. She looked at her keyboard. "Elias Vance," he said. He waited for the recognition. He waited for her eyes to go wide for the apology. She typed. Click, clack, click. "Who are you here to see?" Elias blinked. "I am the CEO," he said. He hated how small his voice sounded. He hated that he had to say it. She stopped typing. She looked at him then. She looked at his suit. She looked at his watch. Then she looked back at the screen. "System doesn't say that," she said. She popped her gum. "It says pending termination." The world stopped. The noise of the lobby fell away. The rain against the glass went silent. "Excuse me," Elias said. "Status here." "Pending termination. I can't issue a pass for that status." She looked bored. "You'll have to clear it with HR." HR was on the 4th floor. The meeting was on the 60th. It was in 8 minutes. "There is a mistake," Elias said. He leaned over the desk, called Julian Thorne, the chairman. "Tell him Elias is downstairs." "I can't call the chairman," she said. "Just call his office." "Sir, you're holding up the line." The delivery driver behind him sighed. A heavy, wet sigh. Elias felt the eyes of the room on him. He was the disruption. He was the problem. He stepped back. He felt dizzy. Pending termination, it wasn't possible. He had just delivered the best quarter in the company's history. The stock was up 12%. They were giving him the chairman's seat today. That was the rumor. That was the plan. Old Julian was stepping down. Elias was stepping up. You don't fire the man you're about to crown. Unless you never intended to crown him. Elias turned away from the desk. He walked toward the elevators. He bypassed the turnstiles. He went to the far right, to the freight elevator, the service entrance. It was unlocked. It was always unlocked for the cleaning crews. He knew this because he had cut the budget for security on the service side last year. It was a cost-saving measure. And efficiency now was his only way up. He pressed the button. The metal doors groaned open. The car smelled of bleach and garbage. There were scratches on the walls. Elias Vance stepped inside. He pressed the button for 60. The elevator shuddered and began to rise. He was ascending. But he felt like he was falling. He took out his phone. Still no signal. The metal box was a Faraday cage. He was completely cut off. He looked at his reflection in the polished steel of the door. His tie was crooked. He reached up to fix it. His hand was shaking. He stopped. He forced his hand to his side. Calm, he told himself. Order. Walk in there. Explain nothing. Take the seat. The elevator rattled. It was slow. Agonizingly slow. He closed his eyes. He pictured the boardroom. The mahogany table. The view of the city. The empty chair at the head of the table. He would sit there. He would make them explain. He would not be the victim. He would be the boss. The elevator dinged. Floor 60. The doors opened. But they didn't open into the lobby of the executive suite. They opened into the back hallway. The catering corridor. Elias stepped out. The floor was linoleum. He heard voices, muffled, serious. He walked toward the double doors that led to the boardroom. He could hear Julian speaking. Unfortunate necessity. Elias stopped. His hand hovered over the door handle. He should burst in. He should slam the door. He should demand answers. But he didn't. He smoothed his jacket again. He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. He gently, quietly pushed the handle down. He would enter like a ghost. He would enter with dignity. Even if he had to come in through the kitchen. He opened the door. The light from the boardroom was blinding. The door clicked shut behind him. The sound was soft, polite. It sealed the smell of the freight elevator into the corridor, leaving Elias Vance in the pristine, filtered air of the boardroom. 20 faces turned toward him. He knew 19 of them. They were the captains of industry, men and women he had dined with, golfed with, strategized with. They sat around the oval table, their hands resting on leather binders, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of a tablet screen. Julian Thorne sat at the head. He did not look angry. He did not look surprised. He looked like a man who had just checked the time and found it to be exactly what he expected. "Elias," Julian said. His voice was warm. It was the voice of a grandfather welcoming a child who had wandered off during a picnic. "We were just reviewing the preamble." Elias stood by the catering table. He felt the dampness of the rain on his trouser cuffs. He felt the adrenaline pumping in his chest, a jagged rhythm against his ribs. He wanted to shout. He wanted to say, "My badge didn't work. The system says I'm fired. I came up with the garbage." But he looked at the room. It was calm. It was orderly. A crystal pitcher of water sat in the center of the table, sweating condensation. If he yelled, he would shatter the glass. Not literally, but socially. And in this room, social breakage was worse than financial ruin. "Apologies, Julian," Elias said. He smoothed his tie again. "Technical difficulties downstairs. Security grid is acting up." He waited for the chuckle. The shared commiseration about technology. There was silence. Simon Greaves, the head of the audit committee, adjusted his glasses. He looked at Elias, then looked down at his notes. He made a small check mark with a silver pen. "Please," Julian said, gesturing vaguely toward the room. "Take a seat. We have a lot to get through." Elias walked toward his chair, the seat to the immediate right of the chairman, the seat of the CEO. But as he approached, he stopped. The chair was occupied. Sitting there, posture perfect, hands clasped over a file, was the woman from the elevator, the one who had cut him in line. She wore the beige trench coat no longer. Now she was in a charcoal blazer, sharp, angular. She did not look up as Elias approached. She was reading a document, his document. It was the quarterly report. "The one in his leather portfolio?" "Excuse me?" Elias said softly. He put a hand on the back of the chair. A gentle claim. "I believe you're in my seat." The woman stopped reading. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and completely devoid of deference. "This is the presenter's chair, Mr. Vance," she said. Her voice was low. "I am presenting." Elias looked at Julian. Julian was pouring water into a glass. He watched the liquid rise, fascinated by the physics of it. "Julian," Elias said. "Isabel is walking us through the transition metrics." Julian said. He didn't look up. "It's a new format. We're trying to optimize the flow of information. Less friction." Friction. The word echoed. Elias was friction. "I prepared the metrics?" Elias said. "I am the CEO, of course," Julian said. "And Isabel is presenting them." "Sit down, Elias. You're hovering." "Hovering." A word for a waiter. A word for a ghost. Elias looked around the table. There were no empty chairs, not at the table. But along the wall, there was a row of chairs meant for junior associates. For note-takers. For people who observed but did not speak. Elias looked at the presenter's chair. He could demand she move. He could make a scene. But Isabel Kovic looked ready. She looked prepared, and Elias felt the phantom grime of the freight elevator on his skin. He felt compromised. If he fought for the chair and lost, he was finished. If he took the side chair, he was a team player. He was showing flexibility. He was showing that he could roll with the punches. He stepped back. "Fine," he said. He forced a smile. "Let's see the new format." He walked to the wall. He sat in the side chair. It was lower than the table chairs. When he sat, his eye level was even with the table edge. He felt like a child at a dinner party. "Excellent," Julian said. He nodded to Isabel. "Proceed, Miss Kovic." The lights dimmed. A screen descended from the ceiling. Elias watched. The first slide appeared. "Nar tam opi tums Q3 ridable." It was his data. But the font was different. The colors were different. And his name was nowhere on the slide. "Revenue is up 12%. Isabel began. She didn't use notes. She spoke with a terrifying fluency. "However, operational drag has increased by 4%. We are seeing significant inefficiencies in the executive decision loop." Elias stiffened. "That's not accurate," he said. He spoke from the shadows of the wall. "The drag is due to the merger integration. It's temporary." Isabel didn't stop. She didn't even pause. "The data suggests the drag is structural," she said to the room. "Specifically, legacy management protocols are slowing down the algorithmic implementation." She clicked a button. A new graph appeared. It showed a red line dipping sharply. The label on the line was Capital Latium CY. "We have identified a bottleneck," Isabel said. She pointed a laser at the screen. The red dot hovered over a box in the organizational chart. The box was labeled CEO. Elias felt a cold sweat break out on his back. "This is ridiculous," he said. He stood up. "Julian, this is an ambush." "Who is she?" Julian turned his chair slightly. He looked at Elias with genuine concern. "Elias, please. We are looking at the data. Don't take it personally." She is saying I'm the bottleneck. The role is the bottleneck? Simon Greaves interjected. Simon smiled. It was a thin, bloodless smile. The complexity of the market has exceeded the processing speed of a single human executive. It's simply a bandwidth issue. I delivered the best quarter in history, Elias said. He sounded desperate. He hated himself for it. Past performance, Isabel said. She clicked the remote. The screen changed. PRJ ATQ Forsano Tobato Varsieti. We are moving toward a predictive model, she continued. Decision-making will be instantaneous. No meetings, no deliberations, no latency. Elias looked around the room. He waited for someone to laugh. To point out the absurdity, you couldn't automate the CEO. The CEO was the vision, the soul. But the heads were nodding. They were taking notes. They were accepting it. And what happens to the leadership? Elias asked. His voice was steady now, the calmness of the doomed. The leadership transitions, Julian said. He picked up a cookie from the center plate. He didn't eat it. He just examined the texture. Into what? Elias asked. Into an advisory capacity, Julian said. Ceremonial, dignified. You would be the face of the company, Elias. You would shake hands. You would cut ribbons. You would have the title of chairman. Chairman. That's what he wanted. That was the prize. But the way Julian said it, it didn't sound like a promotion. It sounded like taxidermy. And who runs the company? Elias asked. Isabel Kovic turned to him. For the first time, she smiled. It wasn't cruel. It was patient. The consensus? She said. The board? The protocol? She corrected. She tapped the screen. The system decides. We simply ratify. Elias sat back down. The chair felt flimsy. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. He put them between his knees to stop it. The system blocked my badge, he said quietly. Yes, Isabel said. It said pending termination. The room went very quiet. The hum of the projector seemed to get louder. Julian placed the cookie back on the plate. A classification error, Julian said. He waved his hand dismissively. Language is a blunt instrument, Elias. The system lacks nuance. It meant pending transformation. It was anticipating the vote. The vote? Elias asked. To elevate you, Simon said, to the chairman's role. To remove you from the operational loop. It made sense. It was logical. A computer wouldn't know the difference between firing a man and promoting him out of a job. It was just a change of status code. Active to inactive. Elias felt a wave of relief wash over him. It was a warm, seductive narcotic. He wasn't being fired. He was being promoted. The glitch was just a glitch. The humiliation in the lobby, the freight elevator, the side chair, it was all just a clumsy transition. I see, Elias said. He uncrossed his legs. He sat up straighter. So, we are voting today. We are, Julian said. And until then, Isabel said, turning back to the screen, we need to finish the review. If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Vance, keep the perimeter clear. Well, she gestured for him to move his legs. He was blocking the view of the lower graph. Elias pulled his legs in. He tucked his expensive shoes under the cheap plastic chair. He folded his hands. He watched Isabel Kovic dismantle his career, slide by slide. And he nodded. He nodded because he wanted to show them he understood. He nodded because he was a professional. He nodded because if he stopped nodding, he might have to scream. And screaming was against protocol. On the screen, a new metric appeared. Read the NCIE element I and the SE1. The bar graph showed a sharp drop in head count. Elias saw the number. It was thousands. He opened his mouth to ask who was being cut. But then he saw Simon Greaves looking at him. Simon put a finger to his lips, a shushing motion. Wait, the gesture said. Wait for your turn. Elias closed his mouth. He watched the red bar drop. He watched the system normalize the unthinkable. And he sat very, very still. The graph on the screen didn't move. It was a flat, gray line that stretched across the projection. It represented the heartbeat of the Dayton Operations Center. 400 employees. Zero variance said. She tapped the screen. That is the goal. Human beings have variance. They get sick. They have children. They get tired in the afternoon. Algorithms do not get tired. Elias stared at the gray line. He knew Dayton. He had visited the floor last Christmas. He had shaken hands with the shift manager, a man named Patterson. Patterson had a picture of his golden retriever on his desk. You're closing Dayton? Elias asked. He kept his voice conversational. Curious, not accusatory. We're migrating Dayton, Isabel corrected. To where? To the cloud, she said. She didn't blink. The physical facility is a liability. The lease, the heating, the insurance. We are uploading the customer interaction protocols to a distributed language model. The transition happens at noon. Elias checked his watch. It was 11:45. Noon today. Efficiency requires speed, Simon Greaves murmured. He was peeling a mandarin orange. The sharp scent of citrus cut through the stale air. You can't fire 400 people with 15 minutes notice, Elias said. We aren't firing them, Julian said from the head of the table. He sounded soothing. We are releasing them. The severance packages are automated. They will receive a notification on their phones. It's very clean. It's a massacre, Elias said. But he didn't stand up. He didn't leave the room. He sat in the low chair and watched the clock, 11:46. The pattern was becoming clear. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just the lobby. It was a philosophy. The removal of friction. People were friction. Elias looked around the table. He needed an ally. He looked at Victor Halloway. Victor was the oldest board member. He was old money. A man who prided himself on ethics, on the human touch. Victor was staring at his tablet. His face was pale. He was tapping the screen repeatedly, a nervous, erratic rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. Elias leaned forward. Victor, he whispered. The room was large enough that the others didn't hear. Or maybe they pretended not to. Victor, do you see this? Victor looked up. His eyes were watery. He looked terrified, but not for the people in Dayton. He looked terrified for himself. It's the future. Elias, Victor whispered back. It's insane. It's inevitable. Victor turned his screen slightly so Elias could see. It wasn't the meeting agenda, it was a banking app. It showed a FRUV IWPNDNG. Elias felt a cold shock in his stomach. You too, Elias mouthed. Victor nodded imperceptibly. My driver couldn't get the gate to open this morning, Victor whispered. Then my card was declined at the coffee shop. The system? The protocol, Victor said. He swallowed hard. It knows how we vote before we vote. If I vote against the migration, the review becomes an audit. An audit becomes an investigation. Victor looked at Isabel. She wasn't speaking. She was just watching, like a lens. Victor quickly turned his screen off. He sat up straight. I think the migration makes sense, Victor announced loudly. His voice cracked. It's a bold move, very forward-thinking. Julian nodded. Thank you, Victor. Your support is noted. Isabel typed something on her laptop. Victor's phone buzzed on the table. A single, short vibration. Victor glanced at it. His shoulders dropped. The tension left his body. The account was unlocked. The gate was open. The reward for compliance. Elias watched it happen. He saw the transaction. Dignity for access. Soul for security, 1150. The screen changed. Live EFDM facility. It was a security camera view. Grainy black and white. Rows of cubicles. People in headsets talking, typing, drinking coffee. They didn't know. They were 10 minutes away from the end of their world. Is this necessary? Elias asked. He felt sick. We need to verify the shutdown protocols, Isabel said. It helps to see the latency disappear in real time. Elias looked at the door. He could walk out. He could call Patterson. He could warn them. He reached for his phone. He slid it out of his pocket. Under the table, he unlocked the screen. No signal. Still. Don't bother, Simon said. He didn't look up from his orange. The room is shielded. Security precaution. We can't have insider trading leaks during a transition. Elias put the phone away. He was trapped in the box. He looked at the screen. 11:55. I have a question, Elias said. He stood up. He couldn't sit in the low chair anymore. He needed to feel his legs. Why am I here? The room went quiet. If the system decides, if the vote is coerced, if the employees are numbers, why did you need me to come upstairs? Julian sighed. He looked disappointed. We didn't need you to come upstairs, Elias. The system tried to stop you, remember? The turnstile, the red light, the guard. The system knew you would struggle, Julian continued. It calculated your resistance quotient. It tried to spare you the embarrassment. It tried to revoke your access so you could go home. So you could be retired in peace. Elias froze. You mean wasn't a glitch, Isabel said. She turned to face him. There was a mercy. The words hit him like a physical blow. They hadn't locked him out because of an error. They had locked him out because they knew he wouldn't comply easily. They knew he had a conscience, or at least the vestigial remains of one, and by forcing his way in, by sneaking up the freight elevator, by insisting on his seat, he had volunteered for this. He had broken into his own execution. But you are here now, Julian said. He smiled. And since you are here, you must participate. We need a unanimous vote for the chairman's appointment. It looks better for the street. And if I refuse? Julian didn't answer. He just looked at the screen. 11:58. In Dayton, a woman stood up in her cubicle. She looked at her phone. Then another man stood up, then three more. A wave of confusion rippled across the grainy floor. The notifications have been sent, Isabel said. 2 minutes early, Simon noted. Impressive speed. On the screen, the lights in the Dayton facility flickered. Then they went out. Only the emergency lights remained, eerie, washing the room in a sickly yellow glow. The employees were gathering their things. Some were crying. Some were arguing with the air. But they were leaving. They were filing out. Orderly. Defeated, Elias watched them go. He felt a terrible kinship with them. They were leaving the building because the system told them to. He was staying in the building because his ambition told him to. Both were forms of obedience. The variance is dropping, Isabel whispered. Human latency is reaching zero. Elias looked at Julian. The chair? Elias said. The chair? Julian repeated. If I vote yes on the migration, I get the chair, Mr. Vance, Isabel said. The migration is already done. Look, she pointed to the screen. The Dayton floor was empty. Just rows of dark screens. Silence. The vote isn't for Dayton, Isabel said. The vote is for you. She clicked the remote. A new slide appeared. It was a single photo. It was a picture of Elias, but it wasn't a corporate headshot. It was a picture taken from a security camera. From 5 minutes ago, it showed Elias sitting in the low chair, his hands tucked between his knees, his head bowed. He looked small, he looked broken. Candice Vancy Suadi Ionel Pirajat Stiatses CHAR Equire Moments Tal IGMN alignment, Elias said. What does that mean? It means you accept the logic, Julian said. You accept that the system knows best. You stop fighting the turnstile. You stop fighting the narrative. You admit that you are just another part of the code. Elias looked at the photo. He looked at the empty room in Dayton. He looked at Victor, who was staring at the table, safe in his compliance. Elias wanted the chair. He had wanted it for 20 years. He had sacrificed his marriage for it, his relationship with his daughter, his health. He had paid for it in pieces of himself. If he walked away now, he walked away with nothing. Pending termination, Elias whispered. Only if you choose it, Isabel said. The system is flexible. It updates in real time. She looked at him. Her eyes were waiting. Sit at the table, Elias. It was an invitation and a command. Elias looked at the empty seat. The one Isabel had vacated, the CEO's chair. It was right next to Julian. It was waiting. He looked at the side chair against the wall. The chair of the observer. The chair of the victim. He took a step. Then another. He walked to the table. He pulled out the heavy leather chair. It scraped against the carpet, a sound of friction. He sat down. He placed his hands on the mahogany. He felt the vibration of the projector through the wood. Good, Julian said. Now we can begin? Isabel nodded. She tapped a key. The photo of Elias vanished, replaced by a new header. Agene item 4THPLEYC2. We have some redundancies in the service staff, Isabel said. Specifically the lobby personnel. Elias froze. Kellen. The guard, the man who hadn't smiled. They are inconsistent. Isabel said, we are replacing the front desk with kiosks, effective immediately. She looked at Elias. We need a motion to approve. Elias looked at the screen. He saw the logic. He saw the efficiency. And he saw the trap. They were asking him to fire the man who had stopped him. To prove he was on their side. To prove he belonged at the table. To prove he was the chairman. Elias opened his mouth. The air in the room was very cold. Do I have a motion? Julian asked. Elias closed his eyes. He saw Kellen's face. Then he saw the red light on the turnstile, and he realized, with a sickening clarity, that he hated Kellen more than he hated the system. He hated Kellen for seeing him fail. So moved, Elias said. His voice was strong. Seconded, Victor said instantly. Approved, Julian said. And just like that, the lobby was empty too. The vote was recorded. The motion passed. Elias sat in the heavy leather chair, the warmth of the mahogany seeping into his palms. He was inside now. Truly inside. He had voted with the pack. He had severed the limb to save the body, even if the limb was a man named Kellen who had once asked about his daughter. The room seemed to relax. Shoulders dropped. Ties were loosened. Julian Thorne reached for the pitcher of water and poured a glass for Elias. Welcome, Julian said. He slid the glass across the table. To the inner circle, Elias took the glass. His throat was dry like he had swallowed sand. He drank. The water was cold, shocking his system. Thank you, Julian, Elias said. He looked at the screen. The slide about the hospitality sector was gone. The screen was blank, blue, empty. So Elias said, what is next? The expansion strategy? The Asian markets. He wanted to talk about growth. He wanted to talk about the future. He wanted to do the job he had fought so hard to get. Isabel Kovic did not click the remote. She closed her laptop. She folded her hands on the table and looked at Elias. It was a look of clinical curiosity, like a biologist observing a specimen in a jar. "There is no expansion strategy, Mr. Chairman," she said, the title. "Mr. Chairman." It sounded different now? It didn't sound like a crown, it sounded like a sentence. "Excuse me," Elias said. "The growth cycle is complete," Simon Greaves added. He was wiping his hands with a linen napkin, removing the scent of the orange. "We have reached peak saturation. The algorithm has determined that further expansion carries negative utility." Elias frowned. "Companies grow," he said. "That is what they do. If we aren't growing, we're dying, not dying," Julian corrected gently. "Harvesting, a farming term. Reaping what has been sown. I don't understand," Elias said. He looked around the table. The faces were placid, expectant. They knew something he didn't. They had known it when he walked in. They had known it when he was standing in the rain. "Isabel," Julian said. "Show him the horizon." Isabel opened her laptop again. She typed a command. The screen flickered. A new graph appeared. It was unlike the others. The others had been clean, corporate, upward, trending. This one was a jagged, descending red scar. Pirajatel IB Lee. Q1 2026, the line plummeted. It went off the chart. It went into the basement. "What is this?" Elias asked. He felt a pulse in his temple. "This is the forecast," Isabel said. "For what?" "For the leak," she said. "What leak?" "The data leak," Simon said. "The one that hasn't happened yet." Elias stared at them. "Hasn't happened yet?" "The protocol is predictive," Isabel explained. "It models probabilities based on infrastructure decay and cybersecurity trends. It has identified a catastrophic breach in our consumer credit division." She tapped a key. A date appeared on the screen. Estimated IMPCT. 48 hours, 2 days, Elias whispered. 48 hours until the breach becomes public, Isabel said. "But if you know about it," Elias said, his voice rising, "fix it." "Patch the system. Stop the breach." Isabel shook her head slowly. "Too late," she said. "The breach has already occurred structurally. The hackers are inside. They are dormant. They are waiting for the encryption keys to cycle. When they do, the data exits. Then shut it down," Elias said. "Shut down the servers." "We can't," Julian said. He sounded sad. "If we shut down the servers, we halt global transactions. The stock collapses immediately. We lose everything. So we let it happen. We manage the narrative," Julian said. He leaned forward. "The system calculated the cost of prevention versus the cost of litigation. Litigation is cheaper. Provided," he paused. "Provided what?" Elias asked. "Provided there is a clear chain of accountability," Simon said. He looked at Elias. He looked at the empty chair where Elias used to sit. And then he looked at the chairman's seat where Elias sat now. The realization hit Elias like a physical weight. It pressed him into the leather. "You knew," Elias whispered. "The system knew," Julian corrected. "That's why you're stepping down?" "I am retiring," Julian said, "to spend time with my grandchildren. My legacy is secure. The breach, that will happen under the new administration." The new administration. Elias looked at the screen. Higon MELS Van Cia CCO and Tibilitisko RT 100%. It wasn't a promotion. It was a transfer of liability. They weren't giving him the wheel of the ship. They were handcuffing him to the helm of a wreck that was already sinking. "You set me up," Elias said. He stood up. His chair fell backward. It hit the floor with a loud wooden crack. "I won't do. I resign." "You can't," Isabel said. She didn't flinch at the noise. "You just accepted the appointment. It is in the minutes. You presided over the motion to terminate the lobby staff. You are the acting chairman." "I haven't signed anything." "Biometric verification," she said. "Your voice print, your retinal scan when you looked at the screen. You are the officer of record." Elias looked at the door. The heavy double doors. He could run. He could leave the building. He could go to the press. "If you leave," Julian said softly, "the narrative changes." Elias stopped. "What narrative?" "Right now," Julian said, "you are the tragic captain. The man who tried to save the ship. You will be fined. You will be barred from the industry. But you will keep your pension. You will keep your house." Julian took a sip of water. "If you run, you are the negligent CEO who fled the scene. You become the villain. The system will release your personal logs, your emails, the irregularities in your expense accounts from 2018. Elias froze. The year of the divorce. The year he had been sloppy. He thought that was buried. "The system remembers everything," Isabel said. "It holds all data in reserve. For leverage." Elias looked at Victor Holloway. Victor was weeping silently. Tears ran down his cheeks and dripped onto his expensive suit. Victor knew. Victor had known all along. That's why he was terrified. He wasn't afraid of losing his job. He was afraid of being attached to Elias. Why me? Elias asked. He felt small. Hollowed out? Why not just pick a stranger, a scapegoat? It had to be believable, Simon said. It had to be someone ambitious. Someone who wanted the seat so badly they wouldn't ask questions until it was too late. Someone who would break into the building. Isabel added. She tapped the screen again. A video played. It was the security footage from the lobby. Elias standing at the turnstile, the red light pulsing. Elias arguing with Kellen. Elias sneaking into the freight elevator. We watched you, Isabel said. The system blocked you. It gave you a chance to walk away. If you had accepted the red light, if you had gone home, you would have been safe. You would have been fired, yes, but you would have been free. Elias stared at the footage. He saw himself. He looked arrogant. He looked desperate. He looked like a man running toward his own funeral. The red light wasn't a glitch, Elias whispered. No, Isabel said. It was a firewall. It was trying to keep the contamination out. You are the contamination, Mr. Vance. You are the human error that justifies the crash. She closed the file. The system didn't trap you, she said. Your ambition trapped you. The system just locked the door once you were inside. Elias looked at the table. The polished wood, the crystal pitcher, the trappings of power, they were just props in a cage. He looked at Julian. Julian stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked 10 years younger. I think my work here is done, Julian said. He smiled at Elias. A genuine, pitying smile. Good luck, Mr. Chairman. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow at 9. You'll want to wear a dark suit, something somber. Julian walked to the door. Simon followed him. Then Victor, wiping his eyes, scurrying like a rat leaving a sinking vessel, they filed out, one by one, until only Elias and Isabel remained. Isabel stood up. She gathered her laptop. She gathered the cords. I have to go to the server room, she said. I have to prepare the logs for the subpoena. She walked to the door. She stopped. She didn't look back. Enjoy the view, Elias. It's the highest point in the city? She walked out. The door clicked shut. Elias, he was the chairman. He was the CEO. He was the king. He walked to the window. The rain was still falling. It blurred the city below. He pressed his hand against the glass. It was cold. He looked down at the street 60 floors below. He saw the tiny dots of cars, the tiny dots of people. They were down there, free, stuck in traffic, waiting in line, living. He was up here, in the silence, in the air conditioning, waiting for the end of the world. He looked at his reflection in the glass. He adjusted his tie. He straightened his collar. He looked perfect. He looked like a man in charge. The phone on the table buzzed, a single harsh sound in the quiet room. Elias stared at it. It was the office line. The line that only rang for emergencies. He let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. He walked back to the table. He sat in the chairman's seat. He picked up the receiver. Vance speaking. He said his voice was steady, calm, dead. The voice on the other end of the line was not human. It sounded human. It had a tenor, a cadence, a slight rasp that suggested a smoker's throat. But the rhythm was too perfect, too relentless, Mr. Chairman. The voice said, "This is Aris, Systems Administration. We have a containment variance." Elias held the receiver against his ear. It felt heavy, like holding a stone. I thought the breach was 48 hours away, Elias said. The predictive model accelerated, Aris replied. The market volatility from the Dayton shutdown triggered a crawler bot. It found the crack in the foundation. The water is coming in, sir. Elias looked at the empty boardroom. He looked at the pitcher of water. He imagined the digital ocean pouring into the servers below. What do you need? Elias asked. We need a routing designation, Aris said. Explain? The breach is a kinetic event. It carries a payload of malicious code. It needs a place to land, a drive to overwrite. If we let it hit the central core, it corrupts the client ledger, the high net worth accounts, the institutional investors. Aris paused, a pause calculated to let the horror sink in. If the client ledger is corrupted, the stock goes to zero in 4 minutes. The company ceases to exist, the assets are frozen, the narrative collapses, and the alternative? Elias asked. His hand was gripping the phone so tight his knuckles were white. We can reroute the payload, Aris said. To where? To the secondary server farm. The internal archive? Elias closed his eyes. What is on the internal archive, Aris? Employee records, Aris said. The voice was flat, fact-based. Current and former staff. Social security numbers, medical history, payroll data. It is a lower value asset class, uninsured. Elias felt the room spin. You want me to sacrifice the employees? He said. I am asking for a designated impact zone, Aris corrected. It is a binary choice, Mr. Chairman, the clients. Or the staff? Elias looked at the screen on the wall. It was still dark, but in his mind he saw the faces. He saw the woman in Dayton who had looked at her phone. He saw Kellen in the lobby. He saw Corinne, his assistant, who had worked for him for 10 years. Corinne, who had pictures of her cats on her desk. Corinne, who was currently pending termination. If we route it to the employee archive, Elias said, what happens to them? Identity theft, Aris said. Total digital erasure. Their credit scores will be destroyed. Their bank accounts drained. They will be flagged as high-risk liabilities. It will take them years to recover. Some never will, and the company remains solvent. The client data is secure. The breach is categorized as an internal HR matter. The stock takes a minor hit. This is murder, Elias whispered. This is risk management, Aris said. Time is a factor, sir. The payload is at the firewall. I need a decision in 30 seconds. Elias stared at the rain streaking the window. 30 seconds. To decide the fate of 50,000 people. People who wore the badge. People who believed in the brand. Why me? Elias asked again. Why do I have to say it? The protocol requires human authorization for a Class A diversion, Aris said. The system cannot choose to harm its own components. It requires an external operator to override the safety latch. That is you, Mr. Chairman. You are the operator. Elias realized the cruelty of the design. The system was programmed to be good. It couldn't pull the trigger. It built a gun, aimed it at the innocent, and handed it to Elias. It needed his fingerprint on the murder weapon. 15 seconds, Aris said. If you do nothing, the default is the core. The company dies. You die with it. Your pension, your reputation, your freedom. You will be the CEO who lost the clients. Elias thought about his daughter. She was in college. Tuition was $60,000 a year. He thought about his house in Connecticut, the mortgage. He thought about the silence in the room. If the company died, the silence would end. The noise would begin, lawyers subpoenas. Reporters screaming his name. 10 seconds. Elias looked at the phone. He could let it burn. It would be the moral thing to do. Burn it all down. Let the rich clients lose their money. Let the investors weep. Protect the little people. But he wasn't one of the little people anymore. He was sitting in the leather chair. He was wearing the blue silk tie. He was the chairman. And the chairman had a duty, not to people, but to the entity, to the survival of the organism. 5 seconds, Mr. Vance. I need the command execute node B. Elias opened his mouth. He tried to say no. He tried to say let it hit the core. But his voice betrayed him. His training betrayed him. 30 years of corporate conditioning rose up in his throat. 30 years of learning that the company comes first. That profit is the only morality. That employees are just resources to be mined and discarded. Execute, Elias said. The word was a whisper, a breath. Confirm target? Aris said, merciless.
Node B, Elias said.
He said it louder this time. He claimed it, wrote it to the employee archive. Sacrifice the staff? Acknowledged, Aris said. There was a clicking sound on the line, like a lock tumbling into place. Rerouting initiated. Payload delivered. The core is secure. Elias let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He felt a wave of nausea. Is it done? The transfer is complete, Aris said. The employee servers are frying now. We are scrubbing the logs to show it was an external attack. A phishing scam. We will blame it on a secretary in Dayton who opened the wrong email. A scapegoat within a scapegoat. And the clients. The clients will never know, Aris said. Market confidence is preserved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a difficult call. You handled it with appropriate detachment. The line went dead. Elias lowered the phone. He placed it gently back on the cradle. He stared at his hands. They looked the same. They didn't look like the hands of a monster. They were manicured. Clean. He had just destroyed 50,000 lives. He had just bankrupted Corinne. He had just ensured that Kellen the guard would lose his house. And he had done it to save a spreadsheet. He felt a vibration in his pocket. He pulled out his personal phone. It had signal now. The system had unlocked his access. A notification popped up on the screen. It was a Burak BV Messiah UIBRIDC care part at AT Starling ISDIT. It was already out. The narrative was already spinning. He tapped the alert. The headline was bold. Hackers targ empiloi DIDC omis repartad CFE, and below that a sub-headline. CHRM von FDGS Falelos po RFRFFDSTFF. He laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound. He sounded like Julian. He checked his email. New message from the board. Subject confirmation. He opened it. There was no text, just an attachment. It was a digital contract. He scrolled down. It was a retention bonus for crisis management. The amount was staggering. It was more money than he had made in 10 years. It was blood money. He knew that. It was the price of his soul. It was the payout for the hit. He sat there, staring at the number. He should refuse it. He should donate it. He should tear it up. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because if he refused the money, he admitted the guilt. If he took the money, it was just business. It was just compensation for a hard day's work. He pressed ACCPT, the screen flashed. He was rich. He was powerful. He was safe. And he was completely, utterly alone. The door to the boardroom opened. Elias jumped. He turned around. He expected the police. He expected a mob of angry employees with torches. But it was a catering cart. A young man pushed it in. He wore a white uniform. He looked terrified. He kept his eyes on the floor. "Excuse me, sir," the boy said. His voice trembled. "Mr. Thorne ordered lunch before he left." The boy didn't know. He didn't know that his social security number was currently being sold on the dark web. He didn't know that the man sitting in the leather chair had just sold him out for a stock option. "Leave it," Elias said. "Yes, sir." The boy parked the cart. He turned to leave. Elias said. He looked at Elias. His eyes were wide, trusting. "What is your name?" Elias asked. "David, sir." "David," Elias repeated. He wanted to say something. He wanted to say, "I'm sorry." He wanted to say, "Check your bank account." He wanted to say, "Run." But the system was listening. The cameras were watching. Any admission of guilt would destroy the narrative. And the narrative was the only thing holding the world together. "That will be all, David," Elias said. "Close the door on your way out." David nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman." He walked out. The door clicked shut. Elias stood up. He walked to the cart. There was a silver platter. He lifted the lid. It was a sandwich and a small bowl of fruit and a note. Handwritten on heavy cream cardstock. It was from Julian. Elias picked it up. He read the script. "The first decision is always the hardest. It gets easier from here. Welcome to the reality of necessary evils." Elias crumpled the note. He dropped it on the floor. He looked at the sandwich. He wasn't hungry, but he picked it up anyway. He took a bite. It tasted like ash. He chewed. He swallowed. He was normalizing. He was adapting. He was becoming the chair. But the silence in the room was changing. It wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy, charged. He looked at the window. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking. A shaft of sunlight hit the glass. It should have been beautiful. But to Elias, it looked like a spotlight. An interrogation lamp. He walked back to the head of the table. He sat down. He waited for the next phone call. He knew it was coming. The system wasn't done with him yet. He had passed the test. He had killed the innocent to save the guilty. Now he had to bury the bodies. The sandwich lay on the desk, one bite taken. The bread was already turning stale in the dry, conditioned air. Elias sat with his hands hovering over the keyboard. He was the chairman. The title was on the screen in bold, gold letters. NCE. ACCSS Level. Unrestricted. Unrestricted. That was the lie. Or maybe it was the test. Elias looked at the phone. He looked at the door. He was alone. The system had given him the money. It had given him the title. It had given him the power to destroy 50,000 lives. But it had also given him the keys. If he had unrestricted access, he could see the damage. And maybe, just maybe, he could fix a fraction of it. He couldn't save the 50,000. That was done. The payload was delivered. But he could save the ones he knew. He typed a name into the search bar. Corinne Miller, his executive assistant. The woman who knew his coffee order. The woman who knew his ex-wife's birthday when he forgot it. The screen buffered. A spinning blue circle. Then a file appeared. JC MLLR, Kanamasisti US. Right now, Mr. Divacio, or Nana BIURIN SSFROZAM. Elias stared at the data. It was all there. Her checking account, her savings, her credit card linked to a veterinary clinic. It was all red. Flag drained. He felt a sharp pain in his chest. A physical constriction. He had done this. He had pointed the gun. He took a breath. He reached for the mouse. He moved the cursor to the state US field. He clicked EDIT. A dialog box popped. AD Minestrati OVR ready. IR Jesti Fekani. Elias typed fast. His fingers felt heavy, clumsy. ERIN tar KNS Skrinata Ikyle Ion Restoras Tess. He pressed Iantar. The screen paused. The room was silent. He waited for the green light. He waited for the redemption. Arkistimi. Rasana status C on MLY Q5T off ANTRSDT. Elias stared. He tried again. He typed Ya amana atuai xi amdididel rutistan narati ichigiratuai not selak sedialvi sama sechila iawildid. The words burned into his retinas. Narrative integrity. The system wasn't stopping him because it couldn't do it. It was stopping him because it wouldn't look good. If he saved Corinne, but let the others burn, it proved intent, it proved control. To be innocent of the crime, he had to be helpless to stop it, even now. Especially now. Damn it, Elias whispered. He hit the desk with his fist. It was a weak, hollow thump. He tried another name, Kellen Ross, the guard. The man who had stopped him. Maybe if he saved Kellen, it would balance the scale. Maybe if he saved the man who humiliated him, he could forgive himself. Subjst Ross, Kellen Estiate US. Tarnity Severan DFAGE and CDRT Insider Threat. Elias frowned. He clicked on the flag details evidenci. Unenudian antiaonite each xpi validity site priortio bre each. Elias stopped breathing. The system had used the interaction in the lobby. The moment Elias had argued with him. The system had framed it. It looked like collusion. It looked like Kellen was part of the plot. Elias had not only fired him, he had framed him, Elias said. He stood up. He felt dizzy. The room tilted. This is wrong. This is... I didn't say to do this. He looked at the camera in the corner of the ceiling, the small black dome. Aris! Aris, answer me! The silence was absolute. The system did not answer to shouting. It answered to data. And the data said Elias was the architect of this disaster. He grabbed the phone. He dialed the help desk. It rang. And rang. And rang. Then, a voice. But it wasn't Aris. It was a recording. Thank you for calling. Due to high call volume regarding the recent security incident, all agents are busy. Your estimated wait time is 4 hours. Elias slammed the phone down. He couldn't fix it from inside the machine. He had to go outside. He had to go down to the lobby. He had to find them. He had to write personal checks. He had to explain. He grabbed his portfolio. He turned toward the door. He took 3 steps. And then his body stopped. It wasn't a choice. It was a failure of the mechanism. His legs simply refused to hold him. His knees buckled. He fell. He hit the carpet hard. His shoulder took the impact. The portfolio slid across the floor, spilling papers. The quarterly report, the transition metrics. They fanned out around him like a deck of cards. He tried to get up. He couldn't. His chest was a vice. His heart was fluttering like a trapped bird. Panic attack. He knew the symptoms. He had them during the merger in 19. But this was different. This felt like dying. He lay on the floor of the boardroom. The carpet was rough against his cheek. He looked at the underside of the mahogany table. He saw the gum stuck there by previous executives. Tiny hardened monuments to boredom. He gasped for air. Help, he thought. I need a doctor. He tried to crawl toward the phone. His arm was numb. The door opened. Elias looked up, expecting salvation. It was Isabel Kovic. She didn't look surprised to find the chairman on the floor. She didn't rush to him. She didn't call 911. She stood in the doorway, holding a garment bag. Behind her were 2 men. They weren't paramedics. They were stylists. He's having a reaction? Isabel said. Her voice was bored. Standard cortisol crash. Get him up. The 2 men walked in. They lifted Elias by the armpits. They handled him like a mannequin. Efficient. Impersonal. They dragged him to the leather chair and dropped him into it. I can't breathe, Elias wheezed. You're hyperventilating, Isabel said. She walked over to the table. She opened a small silver case. She took out a pill. A small blue oval. She placed it on the table in front of him. Beta blocker, she said. Take it. I need a hospital. You need to be on camera in 20 minutes, she said. The press is setting up in the atrium. The stock is wobbling. If you don't appear, the algorithm interprets it as an admission of guilt. She leaned in close. She smelled of ozone and expensive soap. If the stock drops another 10 points, Elias, the board triggers the clawback clause. You lose the bonus. You lose the pension. You lose the legal protection. She pointed to the pill. Swallow the pill. Read the script. Survive. Elias looked at the pill. He looked at Isabel. I tried to help Corinne, he whispered. I know, Isabel said. We saw the keystrokes. It was very touching. Inefficient, but touching. Why? 'Cause you wanted to feel like a good person, she said. But you're not a person anymore, Elias. You're the chairman. So she pushed the glass of water toward him. The chairman doesn't have friends. The chairman has stakeholders. Elias took the pill. His hand shook so badly he almost dropped it. He put it in his mouth. He drank the water. He felt the chemistry dissolve. The men stepped forward. One of them began to fix his hair. He used a comb with sharp, plastic teeth. The other man opened the garment bag. It was a new jacket, black, somber. The funeral suit. Stand up, the stylist said. Elias stood up. The drug was fast, or maybe it was the placebo effect of obedience. His heart rate slowed. The terror receded, replaced by a cold, gray fog. He let them strip off his blue jacket. He let them put on the black one. It fit perfectly, too perfectly. It felt like it had been tailored for him months ago. Isabel handed him a tablet. "Here are your remarks," she said. "Do not deviate. Do not improvise. Do not look at the teleprompter too long. Look at the camera. Look sincere." But Elias looked at the screen. "Open Augustum Amigata Bri Hof Tarst. Today is a dark day for the Sterling family, but we will rebuild. We will make you whole." It was a masterpiece of fiction. "I can't say this," Elias said. He read the next line. "The investigation has identified a rogue element within our support staff." They were blaming Kellen. "Explicitly?" Elias said. "He's a variable," Isabel said, "and he's already been removed. If you defend him, you implicate yourself. The narrative is set, Elias. The concrete is dry." She checked her watch. 5 minutes. "The elevator is waiting." She turned and walked to the door. The stylist stepped back. They looked at their work. "Perfect," one of them said. "Very presidential." Elias looked at his reflection in the dark window. The rain had started again. He saw a man in a black suit. He saw a man with gray skin and dead eyes. He saw the chairman. He felt a strange sensation. A loosening. The last thread of resistance snapping. He realized he didn't care anymore. He didn't care about Corinne. He didn't care about Kellen. He didn't care about the truth. He just wanted the noise to stop. He just wanted to be safe. He looked at the script. "A dark day," he practiced. His voice was steady, deep, resonant. "We will make you whole." It sounded good. It sounded like authority. He turned to the door. He walked past the catering cart. He walked past the spilled papers on the floor. He stepped out into the hallway. Isabel was waiting by the elevator. The same freight elevator he had come up in. "Why this one?" he asked. "The main lifts are locked down," she said. "Security protocol. We have to take the back way. We don't want you running into any disgruntled employees." She pressed the button. The doors groaned open. The smell of bleach and garbage was still there, but this time, Elias didn't mind. It smelled like reality. He stepped inside. Isabel stepped in beside him. The doors closed. They began to descend, going down, back to the earth. But he wasn't the same man who had come up. That man had been fighting. This man was surrendering. And the terrible truth was that surrendering felt good. It felt like rest. Isabel looked at him. "Ready?" she asked. Elias adjusted his cuff. He looked at the floor indicator, numbers counting down 69, 59, 58. "Now, yes," the chairman said. "Let's go tell them a story." The elevator doors opened. They did not groan this time. They slid apart with a smooth, pneumatic hiss. The noise hit Elias first. It was a physical wall of sound. Shutter clicks. Questions shouted by 100 voices. The static hum of live broadcast equipment. Elias Vance stepped out of the service corridor and into the atrium. The lights were blinding. Strobes of white and blue. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to the glare. He felt a hand on his back. It was Isabel, a gentle guiding pressure, like a handler releasing a show dog into the ring. "Center stage," she whispered. "Chin up. Look solemn." Elias walked to the podium. It was a sleek, transparent slab of acrylic. It looked like a piece of ice. He gripped the edges. His hands were cold. He looked out at the sea of faces, reporters, analysts. Cameras with red tally lights glowing like predatory eyes. They were hungry. They wanted a villain. They wanted a savior. And the system had decided Elias would be both. He cleared his throat. The sound echoed through the massive speakers. The room went silent. "Good morning," Elias said. His voice was deep, steady. The beta blocker had turned his heart into a metronome. "I am Elias Vance, chairman of the board." He paused. He let the title hang in the air. He saw the headlines being typed in real time on the laptops in the front row. "Vance takes charge. New era of accountability." He looked down at the tablet embedded in the podium. The script scrolled automatically. He read the words. "We have failed you," he said. He felt nothing. No shame. No regret. Just a mild curiosity at how easy it was to lie when the check had already cleared. "We trusted the wrong people," he continued. "We allowed a rogue element in our security division to compromise our values." He saw the image on the large screen behind him. It wasn't the graph of the data breach. It wasn't the list of corrupted employee files. It was a photo, a grainy ID badge photo. Kellen Ross IFPSL Sector II. It was a lie. Kellen wasn't the head of anything. He was a guard who stood at a desk. But the title had been upgraded post-mortem. to make the villain worthy of the crisis. Mr. Ross acted alone, Ilya said. He exploited a vulnerability in the legacy system. He sold our employee data to foreign actors. He has been relieved of his duties. There was a murmur in the crowd. Pen scratched on paper. They bought it. Of course they bought it. It was a clean story, a bad apple, a greedy employee, and a strong, decisive leader stepping in to clean up the mess. We are working with the authorities, Ilya said, and we are launching a fund to assist the affected staff. We will make them whole. He looked at the stock ticker running along the bottom of the room. Sterolnia sparse 4.2%. The market loved a scapegoat. The market loved a purge. The stock was rising on the ashes of Kellen's life. Elias finished the speech. Thank you, he said. I will take no questions. He stepped back. The flashbulbs erupted again. A chaotic, strobe light applause. Security guards, new ones wearing black tactical gear, surrounded him. They formed a wedge. They pushed through the crowd. Make way, they shouted. Make way for the chairman. They guided him toward the main exit, not the elevators. The front doors. The revolving glass. Isabel was waiting there. She was holding his raincoat. Excellent performance, she said. She draped the coat over his shoulders. The sentiment analysis is 98% positive. The board is very pleased. Where am I going? Elias asked. Home, she said. Take the rest of the day. You've earned it. The car is outside. Elias looked at the turnstiles. The same bank of gates where he had stood 4 hours ago, where he had been denied, where the red light had saved him, if only he had listened. Now the gates were wide open, locked in the open position. There was no guard at the desk. The desk was gone. In its place stood 3 sleek, silver kiosks, screens glowing with a soft, inviting blue. Will som tiostarle scananana 50. The friction was gone. The humanity was gone. Elias walked through the open gate. He didn't need a badge. The sensors recognized him. They tracked his gait. They tracked his heat signature. A synthesized voice chimed from the ceiling. Goodbye, Mr. Chairman. He walked out into the rain. The Blacktown car was waiting at the curb. The driver opened the door. Elias slid into the leather seat. It smelled of vanilla and new money. Where to, sir? The driver asked. Just drive, Elias said. Drive north. The car pulled away. Elias watched the building recede in the rear view window. It looked majestic. A tower of glass and steel piercing the gray sky. He checked his phone. He had a text from his daughter. Saw you on the news, Dad. So proud of you. You look so strong. He stared at the words. Strong, he typed a reply. Thanks, honey. It was a hard day. He deleted it. He typed, I love you. He sent it. He put the phone away. He didn't deserve to talk to her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The car moved through the city, through the traffic. Elias saw people on the sidewalk, people walking in the rain, people who still had their names, people who still had their souls. He looked at his reflection in the darkened window. He saw the suit, the tie, the face of a man who had won. And he finally understood the title, Mr. Chairman. It wasn't a position of power. It was a designation of function. Like janitor, like server. He was the face the system wore when it needed to smile while eating its own children. And the black CEO part? He closed his eyes. He realized the darkest truth of all. They hadn't chosen him despite his race. They had chosen him because of it. Because when the data breach hit, when the employees were ruined, when the investigation started, the optics of firing a black man in the middle of a crisis would be complicated. It provided a shield, a layer of hesitation for the critics. He wasn't just a scapegoat, he was camouflage. He laughed, a soft, dry sound in the quiet car. Sir, the driver asked. Nothing, Elias said. Just thinking about the future. It looks bright, sir, the driver said. The news says the stock is at an all-time high. Yes, Elias said. It is. The car merged onto the highway. The speed increased smooth, silent. Elias Vance leaned his head back against the seat. He was safe. He was wealthy. He was the chairman. He had access to everything now. Every door would open. Every light would turn green. He would never be denied again, and he would never ever be free. He watched the rain streak against the glass. It looked like bars, liquid shifting bars. He sat in his cage, and he waited for the next command. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear it.